Emma never imagined that the friendly neighbor, Thomas, was hiding a horrifying secret, one that would shatter her sense of safety and expose a predator lurking in plain sight. The town was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's name. Children rode their bikes along quiet streets, laughing as they raced each other to the corner park, while neighbors tended to their gardens or chatted over fences. It was the kind of town that felt safe, where doors were rarely locked and parents felt confident letting their kids play outside. On the surface, life appeared calm and predictable, but even in the quietest towns, shadows sometimes hid where no one expected them. Thomas had recently moved into a small brick house on the edge of the neighborhood. To outsiders, he seemed like a perfectly ordinary man, polite, smiling, and always willing to lend a hand. He helped carry groceries, mowed lawns for neighbors, and offered advice on home repairs. Many residents welcomed him with open arms, appreciating the friendliness that seemed so genuine. But beneath the surface, a few people noticed subtle things that made them uneasy. He lingered longer than necessary when children were around, asked questions that seemed oddly personal, and watched people with an intensity that didn't feel right. It was the kind of feeling that was hard to explain, the instinct that something wasn't as innocent as it appeared. Emma, a 12-year-old girl who lived just a few houses down from Thomas, noticed him the first week he moved in. He seemed to appear wherever she went, whether she was walking home from school, playing in the yard, or helping her mother carry groceries. At first, she tried to ignore it, thinking she might be imagining things, but the sensation of being watched never faded. The unease gnawed at her, subtle at first, then impossible to ignore. Other parents noticed too, whispering quietly about the way Thomas interacted with their children. There was no proof of wrongdoing, only a sense of discomfort, a warning bell that something about him wasn't right. Despite these feelings, life continued, and Thomas maintained the image of a helpful, ordinary neighbor. He smiled at families, waved to children, and joined in neighborhood events, blending seamlessly into the community. It was this very normalcy that made the sense of danger all the more unsettling. The town remained unaware that behind the polite exterior, a darkness lurked. What appeared to be a friendly neighbor was quietly observing, waiting for the right moment. The peaceful streets, the laughter of children, and the warm smiles of neighbors hid the beginning of a story that would shock the town to its core, a story that would reveal the truth behind Thomas' carefully constructed image. Emma's unease grew with each passing day. At first, she tried to convince herself that Thomas was harmless, that perhaps she was imagining things. But it became impossible to ignore. He seemed to know when she would be walking home from school, appearing on the same street corners, watching from behind trees or parked cars. She felt a shiver run down her spine every time she noticed him. The smile he wore never reached his eyes. It was practiced, calculated, and chilling in its persistence. Small incidents began to accumulate, each one adding to her growing fear. Thomas offered her candy without reason, sometimes even leaving little notes in her backpack. He asked questions that seemed innocent at first, like her favorite books or hobbies, but the way he asked them made her uncomfortable. The questions were probing, the kind that made her feel trapped even though no one else was around. Every glance from him felt like an intrusion. Every step toward him made her stomach twist with unease. Emma's parents remained unaware of the full extent of her fear. She hesitated to tell them, unsure if they would believe her or think she was overreacting. Yet, she found herself changing her route home, avoiding streets where she knew Thomas might be waiting. She began to pay attention to the time, wondering if he would appear at a certain hour, and she avoided playing outside whenever she saw his car parked nearby. A sense of dread grew within her, the kind that is difficult for adults to recognize, but impossible for a child to ignore. Meanwhile, whispers began to circulate among other parents in the neighborhood. Some had noticed Thomas lingering too long at playgrounds, asking unusual questions or making small gestures that seemed inappropriate. Yet, without proof, it was difficult to act, and many parents hesitated to accuse someone who appeared so ordinary. The tension spread quietly, like a shadow across the streets. People began to watch more carefully, noticing things they had previously dismissed. Despite the rising suspicion, Thomas continued to maintain his facade. He smiled at neighbors, offered help at the local store, and blended seamlessly into community life. His outward kindness masked the unease he caused, making it difficult to confront or expose him. For Emma, the fear was constant, and every step outside felt like walking on a tightrope. The safety she once felt in her town was slipping away, replaced by a growing awareness that someone she had trusted or at least assumed was harmless was watching her too closely. The quiet streets of the neighborhood, once full of laughter and ease, had begun to feel like a place where danger lurked just out of sight, waiting for the right moment. One afternoon, Emma's unease became impossible to ignore. She had been walking home from school, her backpack bouncing against her shoulders, when she noticed Thomas leaning against a tree along her usual route. His eyes followed her every step, and for the first time, fear overtook her hesitation. She quickened her pace, hoping he would simply go away. But he did not. Instead, he subtly shifted his position, keeping her within view without making it obvious to any passing neighbors. Emma's heart pounded, and she felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. Nearby, her older cousin, who had been walking a few streets behind, noticed Thomas as well. Something about his presence felt unnatural, almost predatory. Hidden behind a row of bushes, the cousin watched as Thomas moved closer to Emma, his behavior increasingly suspicious. Emma remained unaware of just how close he was getting, focused on trying to appear calm and continue walking. But the tension in the air was thick and suffocating, the kind that made every small sound, the crunch of leaves, the distant bark of a dog, feel amplified and urgent. Thomas reached out as Emma passed, attempting to touch her in a way that was quick, deliberate, and invasive. Though he tried to act casual, his intentions were clear to the observer hidden nearby. Shock rippled through the cousin, who immediately ran home to tell Emma's parents what had happened. Panic set in quickly, a mix of fear for Emma's safety and disbelief that someone so seemingly ordinary could act in such a disturbing way. Emma's parents, initially stunned, acted immediately. They contacted the local police and reported the incident. At first, law enforcement struggled with the lack of physical evidence. Thomas denied any wrongdoing, presenting himself as the same helpful, polite neighbor he had always been. Neighbors whispered behind closed doors, and a sense of tension settled over the community like a heavy fog. Everyone became hyper-aware of Thomas' movements, noticing patterns and behaviors they had previously overlooked. The quiet streets that had once been full of laughter and carefree steps now felt heavy and charged. Emma's fear was mirrored in the cautious glances of parents and the wary steps of children. The incident marked a turning point for the neighborhood, a clear signal that someone they had trusted, or at least tolerated, harbored dangerous intentions. The thought of normalcy was cracked, revealing a hidden threat that had been lurking in plain sight. The town, once peaceful and secure, now faced the unsettling truth that danger could exist behind the most ordinary of smiles, waiting for the right moment to strike. The police investigation into Thomas began quietly but methodically. Detectives interviewed neighbors, examined Thomas' background, and reviewed surveillance footage from nearby stores and streets. Each step revealed small, unsettling patterns. It turned out that Thomas had moved frequently over the years, never staying in one town long enough for suspicion to grow. In each place, rumors of inappropriate behavior around children had surfaced, but without concrete evidence, nothing had been formally reported. It was a trail of subtle warnings that, when connected, painted a chilling picture. As the investigation continued, authorities discovered footage showing Thomas lingering near playgrounds and schoolyards at unusual times. He appeared in corners of streets where children walked home alone, often watching from behind parked cars or trees. The footage captured moments of him interacting with kids in ways that, while seemingly innocent, now looked calculated and deliberate. The realization that these were not random coincidences sent a wave of anger and fear through the community. The friendly neighbor they had trusted for months was revealed to be someone who had spent years carefully observing children, seeking opportunities to exploit them. The most damning evidence came from Emma herself. Hidden in her backpack were small items Thomas had given her: drawings, notes, and trinkets that at first seemed harmless. Upon closer inspection, detectives saw that these items were part of a manipulative pattern, designed to normalize his attention and make Emma feel indebted or confused. Each note, each drawing was a calculated tool in a long-standing strategy of grooming. The discovery was horrifying, a clear sign that Thomas' intentions were far from innocent. The town struggled to process the truth. Many residents felt betrayed, realizing that the man who had seemed so ordinary, even kind, had been hiding a dark history behind his polite demeanor. Parents began retracing steps, thinking back to moments that once seemed harmless, now understood as warning signs. The investigation revealed the unsettling reality of how predators can operate under the radar, blending seamlessly into everyday life while planning harmful actions in secret. By the end of the investigation, law enforcement had collected enough evidence to build a strong case. Every detail, his past moves, surveillance footage, witness accounts, and the items found in Emma's backpack formed a clear narrative of predatory behavior. What had once been suspicion and unease now became undeniable proof. The town, though shaken, prepared for justice to take its course, learning a painful lesson about vigilance, awareness, and the importance of listening to instinctive warnings, no matter how small they may seem. The shadow that had loomed quietly over their streets was finally illuminated, exposing a truth they could no longer ignore. The day Thomas was arrested sent shockwaves through the town. Families who had once waved at him from their front porches now watched in disbelief as police led him away in handcuffs. The man who had seemed so ordinary, so friendly, was now revealed as a predator. The news spread quickly, leaving parents angry, shaken, and questioning how someone with such a dark past could have lived among them unnoticed. For many, the revelation was both terrifying and relieving. The threat had been identified, but the betrayal of trust ran deep. The trial that followed revealed the full extent of Thomas' manipulation. Evidence gathered by the police surveillance footage, witness statements, and the disturbing items from Emma's backpack painted a clear picture of his intent. The court learned that he had been grooming children over the years, moving from town to town, leaving a trail of unease in his wake. Every testimony and piece of evidence chipped away at the facade he had carefully maintained for so long. It was a chilling reminder of how predators can blend into everyday life, hiding behind smiles, polite manners, and helpful deeds. Emma and her family, though deeply traumatized, found a measure of strength in the process. The young girl who had once felt powerless became a symbol of courage in her community. Her willingness to speak up, combined with her cousin's quick thinking, had exposed the truth and ensured that Thomas could no longer harm anyone else. The town rallied around her and other children, creating support networks, implementing safety measures in schools, and educating families about the signs of grooming and predatory behavior. The experience left a lasting impact on everyone, changing the way they viewed safety, trust, and vigilance. Community meetings were held, and parents worked together to establish watch programs and safety protocols for children. Children learned to recognize uncomfortable situations and speak up without fear, while adults committed to paying closer attention to the people in their neighborhoods. Thomas' arrest became a turning point, a reminder that evil can hide in the most ordinary appearances and that vigilance, communication, and courage are essential tools in protecting the vulnerable. Although the town would never fully forget the shock and betrayal, it emerged stronger and more united. The peaceful streets regained a sense of cautious normalcy, but the memory of what had happened served as a lasting lesson. In the end, the darkness that had lurked quietly in plain sight was confronted, exposed, and stopped. And the bravery of one young girl ensured that the community would never allow such a threat to go unnoticed again.